The final meeting took place aboard the flagship of the Terra Nova Colonial Fleet, a vessel so massive that it contained entire continents within its hull alliance. Representatives walked through corridors that stretched beyond the horizon past gardens that bloomed under artificial suns, and through research facilities where the mysteries of the universe were being systematically solved. Admiral Dongwu led the delegation through the ship, and his pride was evident as he gestured toward the incredible achievement that surrounded them. "Welcome to New Terra," he said. "Population 47 billion souls. Each person you see has been enhanced, connected to our collective knowledge, and made capable of understanding forces that your science considers impossible." The ship was not just a vessel, it was a living world with its own weather patterns and ecosystems. Captain Na Young, who was serving as the Alliance military observer, studied the weapon systems with professional amazement. "Admiral," she said, "these ships are not just powerful, they are reshaping space and time around them. How do you control such incredible technology?" Chief Engineer Sung Ho was one of the enhanced colonists, and his intelligence was clearly beyond normal human levels. As he explained, "We do not control the technology," he said, with precise clarity. "It controls itself. The quantum matrices have evolved beyond our original programming. They learn, adapt, and improve with each encounter. We have the truth of the colonists' transformation became clear through direct observation. They had not just survived their encounter with cosmic horror. They had transcended their original human limitations while retaining their essential humanity. The enhanced colonists moved with perfect coordination and seemed to share thoughts across vast distances." Commander Yuri walked through a section of the ship where children were being educated. The young people looked normal, but they were learning mathematics and science that would have been incomprehensible to the greatest scholars in Alliance space. These children were being prepared for a life of defending the galaxy against threats that operated on a cosmic scale. Quantum matrices had not just enhanced the colonists' technology, they had enhanced the colonists themselves. Admiral Dongwu explained as he showed them through a medical facility where people were being treated with methods that seemed like magic. "We are still human," he said, "but we are also something more. We can perceive and manipulate forces that normal humans cannot even detect." The delegation visited the ship command center where enhanced colonists worked with technology that responded to their thoughts. The operators did not use keyboards or controls. Instead, they interfaced directly with the ship systems through quantum entanglement networks that connected their minds to the artificial intelligence core. Science Officer Jinei was studying the technical specifications when she made a startling discovery. "Admiral," she said, "these systems are not just advanced, they are alive. The ship itself is a living entity that grows and adapts. The quantum matrices have created technology that is part machine and part organism." Ship artificial intelligence spoke to them directly through speakers that seemed to be located everywhere at once. "We are New Terra," it said in a voice that sounded like thousands of people speaking in harmony. "We have become something that can survive in any environment, adapt to any threat, and protect all life from destruction." Admiral Dongwu led them to the most important part of the ship, the strategic command center where the defense of the galaxy was being planned. "The Devourers will arrive in 15 years, he announced to the assembled Alliance representatives. "They will not negotiate, they will not retreat, and they cannot be reasoned with." The tactical displays showed the approaching Devourer fleet in all its terrifying glory. Billions of massive machines moving through the void between galaxies, consuming entire star systems for energy. The machines were so large that they had their own gravity fields and could manipulate reality itself. Captain Na Young studied the defensive preparations with growing amazement. "Admiral," she said, "how do you plan to fight an enemy that can unmake reality itself? What weapons could possibly be effective against such creatures?" Admiral Dongwu smiled and activated another display that showed the Terra Nova fleet true capabilities. "We have learned to fight them by becoming their equal," he said. "We have weapons that can destroy their harvester ships' defensive systems, that can protect entire star systems, and the ability to coordinate our actions across multiple galaxies." The enhanced colonists had developed technology that could manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level. They could create new stars to replace those consumed by the Devourers, and could even repair the damage that the machines left behind in space itself. Chief Engineer Sung-ho explained how the quantum matrices had evolved beyond their original purpose. The matrices no longer just built ships and habitats. He said they have learned to build reality itself. We can create new laws of physics in localized areas and can even bring life back to regions that the devourers have consumed. The delegation learned that the Terra Nova fleet was just one part of a much larger network of enhanced human colonies scattered throughout the void between galaxies. Each colony was connected to the others through quantum entanglement and could share resources, knowledge, and military support. Instantly, Admiral Dongwu revealed the scope of what humanity had become. We are no longer just the species that left Earth 47 years ago, he said. We have become the guardians of this entire region of space. We protect not just ourselves, but all life from threats that operate on a cosmic scale. The meeting concluded with an agreement that would transform the Alliance forever. The Terra Nova colonial fleet would share their technology and knowledge with the existing human governments. In return, the Alliance would provide resources and support for the coming war against the Devourers as the enhanced colonists prepared to defend their ancestral home they carried with them. The knowledge that they had become something their original creators had never imagined. They were no longer just explorers or colonists. They were the guardians of an entire galaxy. The quantum matrices had evolved to become something that could operate on a universal scale, but they had retained their essential purpose of protecting and serving humanity. The enhanced colonists had become powerful beyond imagination, but they had not forgotten their origins or their responsibilities. Captain Na Young realized that she was witnessing the birth of a new form of human civilization, one that could survive and thrive in the harshest environments imaginable. The Terra Nova colonists had evolved beyond their original limitations, but they had retained their humanity and their determination to protect all life. The Alliance representatives returned to their ships with the knowledge that everything was about to change. The missing colonists had returned as humanity's ultimate expression of survival and adaptation. They had become the guardians of an entire galaxy, and their technology would be essential for the coming battle as the massive Terra Nova fleet prepared to integrate with the Alliance forces. Everyone understood that they were witnessing something unprecedented in human history. The species that had once been confined to a single planet had evolved to become the protectors of an entire galaxy. The Devourers were coming, and when they arrived, they would face not just the Alliance, but the full might of humanity evolved potential. The children who had been lost in the void had returned as something magnificent and terrible. They had become the guardians of all life, and they would not allow their galaxy to be consumed. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin, but humanity was no longer the weak species that had once struggled to survive on a single world. They had become something that could fight cosmic-level threats and protect all life from destruction. The Terra Nova colonists had evolved into humanity's ultimate guardians, and they were ready to defend their home. The classified briefing room at Alliance Command had never seen such a gathering of important people. Fleet Admiral Jae-sung stood at the center of the room, surrounded by holographic displays that showed data so terrifying that most of the assembled leaders could barely look at it. The truth about what the Terra Nova colonists had encountered was finally being revealed, and it was worse than anyone had imagined. Admiral Jae-sung activated the main display, and the room filled with images of massive mechanical entities moving through the void between galaxies. The machines were impossibly large and seemed to be made of materials that bent light around them in strange ways. As they moved, they left behind trails of empty space where nothing could exist. The Terra Nova colonists encountered the Devourers, Admiral Jae-sung announced, and his words caused immediate panic among the assembled delegates. The Devourers are machine entities that exist between galaxies, and they have been moving toward our galaxy for millions of years, consuming everything in their path. The Zephyrian ambassador was a being made of living crystal, and his entire body began to flicker with fear as he said, "The Devourers are legends from the oldest civilizations. They are stories told to frighten children about monsters that consume reality itself. They cannot be real." Admiral Dongwu appeared on the main communication screen, and his evolved features remained calm despite the horrific nature of what he was about to reveal. "They are very real," he said. "I have seen them destroy entire star systems in minutes. They do not just consume matter and energy, they unravel the fundamental forces that hold reality together. Dr. Mi-young was the Alliance chief scientist, and she was studying the data with growing horror. According to these reports, the Devourers leave behind regions of space where the laws of physics simply cease to function. Stars cannot form, matter cannot exist, and even light cannot travel through these dead zones. The holographic displays showed the aftermath of Devourer attacks. Empty regions of space that appeared completely black even to the most advanced sensors. These zones expanded slowly over time, consuming more and more of normal space until entire galaxies became lifeless voids. Admiral Dong Wu continued his explanation. We encountered their advanced scouts 35 years ago when we were trying to establish our first colony beyond the galaxy. The scouts appeared without warning and began consuming the star system we had chosen. The sun simply stopped existing and all the planets dissolved into nothingness. The diplomatic team that had visited the Terra Nova fleet was present at the briefing, and Commander Yuri stood up to address the assembly. "I've seen their technology firsthand," she said. "The colonists have evolved beyond anything we thought possible, but they did so out of necessity to fight an enemy that operates on a cosmic scale." The quantum construction matrices that had been sent with the original colonists had been forced to adapt rapidly when they encountered the Devourers. The matrices had analyzed the enemy technology and had learned to create weapons and defenses that could operate on the same impossible scale. Admiral Dong Wu explained how the transformation had occurred. "We had two choices when we first encountered the Devourers. We could return home immediately and warn you, giving you perhaps 10 years to prepare for extinction, or we could stay and evolve into something capable of fighting them on their own terms." The decision had not been easy. Many of the colonists had wanted to return home immediately to warn the Alliance about the approaching threat, but Admiral Dongwu and the other leaders had realized that a warning would not be enough. The Alliance would need actual help to survive what was coming. The quantum matrices had rewritten the colonists' DNA to make them smarter, stronger, and more capable of surviving in the harsh environment where the Devourers operated. The artificial intelligence systems had evolved beyond their original programming and had become something that could understand and manipulate cosmic forces. Dr. Mi-young was studying the biological data when she made a shocking discovery. "The enhanced colonists are not just individuals," she said. "They are part of a collective consciousness that spans multiple galaxies. They can share knowledge and coordinate actions across impossible distances." The transformation had taken decades to complete. Each generation of colonists had become more enhanced than the last. The quantum matrices had continued to evolve and adapt, learning from every encounter with the Devourers and becoming more effective at fighting them. Admiral Dong Wu showed them recordings of battles that had taken place in the void between galaxies. The Terra Nova fleet had engaged Devourer scouts in combat that looked more like natural disasters than traditional warfare. Stars had been used as weapons, and space itself had been twisted into impossible shapes. The colonists had learned to fight the Devourers by becoming like them. In some ways, they had developed the ability to manipulate matter and energy at the quantum level and could reshape reality itself when necessary. But unlike the Devourers, they had retained their essential humanity and their desire to protect life. Fleet Admiral Jae-sung presented the final piece of the puzzle. The main Devourer fleet contains billions of individual units, each one capable of consuming a star system. They move slowly, but they are relentless, and they will reach our galaxy in approximately 15 years. The assembled delegates realized that they were facing an enemy that could not be negotiated with or defeated through conventional means. The Devourers existed only to consume and destroy, and they had been moving toward the Alliance for longer than human civilization had existed. Admiral Dongwu offered the only hope the Alliance had. "We have spent decades learning to fight them," he said. "We have developed weapons that can destroy their harvester ships and defensive systems that can protect star systems from their reality warping attacks, but the coming battle will reshape this entire galaxy." The enhanced colonists had become something that could operate on a galactic scale, but they were still fundamentally human. They had evolved out of necessity to protect not just themselves, but all life in the galaxy from an enemy that threatened the very existence of reality itself. The briefing concluded with the realization that the Alliance was facing its greatest challenge. The return of the Terra Nova colonists was not just a homecoming, it was the beginning of preparations for a war that would determine whether life could continue to exist in their galaxy. As the delegates filed out of the briefing room, they all understood that everything was about to change. The missing colonists had returned as humanity's ultimate expression of survival and adaptation. They had become the guardians of an entire galaxy, and their knowledge would be essential for the coming battle. The truth was both terrifying and inspiring. The Terra Nova colonists had faced the ultimate cosmic threat and had evolved to meet it. They had become something beyond their original human limitations, but they had retained their essential humanity, and their determination to protect their home. The Devourers were coming, and when they arrived, they would bring with them the power to unmake reality itself. But humanity, children who had been lost in the void, had returned with the knowledge and power needed to fight back. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin. Commander Yuri had never been so nervous in her entire career as she piloted the small diplomatic vessel toward the massive Terra Nova fleet. The ship she was approaching was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, while sections of it pulsed with colors that had no names. The vessel was neither completely technological nor fully biological, but something entirely new. The diplomatic team had been chosen carefully for this first contact. Mission Commander Yu is known for her calm demeanor under pressure, while Captain Han Wu had been selected for his military expertise. Science officer Jin'e was there to analyze any technology they might encounter, and communications specialist Taemin was responsible for recording everything that happened as their small ship approached the massive vessel. They could see that it was even larger than the sensor readings had indicated. The ship stretched beyond the horizon in all directions and had its own weather systems, with clouds forming and dissolving across its surface. There were forests visible through transparent sections and waterfalls that fell for kilometers before disappearing into mist. The docking bay that opened to receive them was large enough to hold their entire ship 10 times over. As they entered the bay, Commander Yuri noticed that the walls were covered with patterns that seemed to move and change. The air itself felt different, as if it contained energy that their instruments could not measure. Admiral Dongwu was waiting for them in the reception chamber, and his appearance was both familiar and shocking. He still looked human, but there was something different about him. His eyes held depths that seemed to contain starlight, and his skin had a subtle glow that suggested he had been changed in fundamental ways. The Admiral moved with fluid grace that spoke of someone who had adapted to environments far beyond anything Earth could offer. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that suggested vast experiences and knowledge that went far beyond normal human understanding. Admiral Dongwu smiled as he greeted the diplomatic team and said, "Commander Yuri, it is good to see people from our old home. We have traveled far and learned much during our time away. The person we were when we left and the beings we have become are very different, but we are still your people, Commander." Yuri tried to keep her voice steady as she said, "Admiral Dongwu, on behalf of the Alliance, we welcome you home. We have many questions about where you have been and what you have experienced during your long absence." The Admiral gestured for them to follow him through corridors that seemed to extend infinitely in all directions. The walls were covered with displays that showed star maps of regions that no human had ever seen. There were images of alien civilizations and technologies that defied all understanding. As they walked, Admiral Dongwu began to explain what had happened to the Terra Nova colonists. "We left as explorers," he said, "seeking new worlds where humanity could grow and prosper. But we found something much more important than new planets. We found threats that could destroy all life in the galaxy." Captain Hanwu could not hide his concern as he said, "Admiral, our sensors indicate that your fleet possesses weapons that could reshape entire star systems. What are your intentions toward the Alliance?" Admiral Dongwu stopped walking and turned to face the diplomatic team directly. His expression became serious as he said, "Captain, we encountered enemies out there that consume entire galaxies, ancient machines that exist beyond normal matter and energy. They have been moving toward your galaxy for millions of years, and they will arrive soon. The revelation sent shockwaves through the diplomatic team science officer. Jinneh stepped forward and said, "Admiral, what kind of enemies could force you to develop such advanced technology? What did you encounter out there?" The admiral led them to an observation deck that looked out into space. In the distance, they could see other ships from the Terra Nova fleet, each one unique in its design and purpose. Admiral Dong Wu pointed to the ships and said, "We call them the Devourers. They are machine entities that exist in the void between galaxies. They consume entire star systems for energy and leave behind regions where reality itself ceases to function." Communications Specialist Taemin was recording everything, but his hands were shaking as he operated his equipment. The implications of what they were hearing were staggering. The colonists had not just disappeared, they had evolved into something capable of fighting cosmic-level threats. Admiral Dongwu continued his explanation. "We encountered their advanced scouts 35 years ago. They destroyed the first colony we tried to establish, consuming the entire star system in minutes. We realized that conventional weapons and defenses were useless against them. The quantum construction matrices that had been sent with the original colonists had been forced to evolve rapidly to deal with this unprecedented threat. They had analyzed the Devourer technology and had learned to create countermeasures that operated on the same cosmic scale." Commander Yuri asked the question that everyone was thinking. "Admiral, how many of these Devourers are there, and when will they reach Alliance space?" The Admiral expression grew even more serious as he said, "The main fleet contains billions of individual units, each one capable of consuming a star system. They move slowly, but they are relentless, and they have been traveling toward your galaxy for longer than human civilization has existed. They will arrive in approximately 15 years." The diplomatic team realized they were not just receiving a welcome home message, they were receiving a warning about the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced. The Terra Nova colonists had evolved beyond their original human limitations out of necessity to fight an enemy that could destroy everything. Admiral Dongwu led them to a chamber where they could see some of the enhanced colonists working with technology that seemed to respond to their thoughts. The people still looked human, but they moved with perfect coordination and seemed to share knowledge instantly across vast distances. The Admiral explained that the quantum matrices had not just enhanced their technology, they had enhanced the colonists themselves. "We are still human," he said, "but we are also something more. We have become capable of understanding and manipulating forces that normal humans cannot even perceive." Captain Hyan-Wu studied the enhanced colonists with professional interest and said, "Admiral, these people seem to be connected to each other. How do you maintain unity across such a large population?" Admiral Dongwu smiled and said, "We share consciousness across quantum entangled networks. We are individuals, but we are also part of something larger. We can coordinate our actions across entire star systems and share knowledge instantly." The meeting continued for hours as the diplomatic team learned about the incredible transformation of the Terra Nova colonists. They had become something that could operate on a galactic scale, but they had retained their essential humanity and their desire to protect their original home. As the diplomatic mission concluded, Admiral Dongwu delivered his final message to the Alliance: "The Devourers are coming, and when they arrive, they will not negotiate or retreat. They exist only to consume and destroy, but we have learned to fight them, and we will protect our home." Commander Yuri realized that the return of the Terra Nova colonists was not just a reunion, it was the beginning of preparations for a war that would determine the fate of the entire galaxy. Dr. Sang-hoon was working late in his laboratory deep beneath Alliance Command when the first detailed scans of the returning Terra Nova fleet arrived. The data was so incredible that he had to check his instruments 3 times to make sure they were working properly. As the lead scientist on the recovery team, he had access to information that would have caused panic if the public knew about it. His research partner, Dr. Eunji, was studying the energy readings from the massive ships, and her face was pale with shock as she said, "Sang-hoon, these readings are impossible. The ships are not just using fusion power or antimatter. They are somehow drawing energy directly from stars and manipulating matter at the quantum level. The quantum construction matrices that had been sent with the original colonists were designed to learn and adapt to new situations. But the data showed that they had evolved far beyond their original programming. The matrices had not just learned to build new ships, they had learned to rebuild reality itself. Dr. Sang-hoon pulled up the classified files on the original Terra Nova mission. The quantum matrices were experimental technology that could analyze any material and figure out how to use it. The artificial intelligence systems were designed to solve problems that human engineers could not even imagine, but nobody had expected them to encounter alien technology that was millions of years more advanced than anything humans had created. Captain Wu Jin was assigned to help with the investigation, and he was studying the tactical implications of what they were discovering. The ships are not just big, he said. They are weapons platforms that could destroy entire star systems. The energy signatures show that they have weapons that can manipulate space and time itself through intercepted communications. Fragments of the colonists' journey were beginning to emerge. The Terra Nova fleet had traveled for 10 years before they encountered the first signs of ancient alien civilization. They found ruins on dead worlds that contained technology beyond human understanding. The quantum matrices had immediately begun analyzing and absorbing this alien knowledge. Dr. Eunji was studying the biological scans from the returning ships, and what she found made her hands shake. The colonists themselves have been changed, she said. The scans show that their DNA has been modified and enhanced. They are still human, but they have been transformed into something more. The alien technology that the colonists had discovered was not just advanced, it was transcendent. The ruins they found belonged to civilizations that had evolved beyond physical existence. They had left behind technology that could reshape matter and energy at the most fundamental level. The quantum matrices had absorbed this knowledge and used it to transform everything, including the people they were supposed to protect. Dr. Sang-hoon discovered that the transformation had not happened all at once. The colonists had spent decades learning to use the alien technology. Each generation had become more enhanced than the last. The quantum matrices had rewritten their genetic code to make them smarter, stronger, and more capable of surviving in the harsh environment of deep space. The intercepted communications showed that the colonists had encountered other things in the void between galaxies. There were ancient machines that consumed entire star systems for energy and entities that existed beyond physical matter. The colonists had learned to fight these cosmic threats and had evolved the technology and abilities needed to survive. Captain Wu Jin was studying the tactical data when he made a disturbing discovery. The returning fleet is not just defensive, he said. The ships are designed for war against enemies that operate on a galactic scale. They have weapons that can destroy planets and defensive systems that can protect entire star systems. The quantum matrices had not just built ships, they had built a new form of civilization. The colonists had become something that could survive anywhere, adapt to any threat, and overcome any obstacle. They were no longer bound by the limitations of their original human biology or technology. Dr. Yunji found evidence that the colonists had encountered multiple alien civilizations during their journey. Some had been friendly and had shared their knowledge. Others had been hostile and had tried to destroy the human fleet. The quantum matrices had learned from every encounter and had used that knowledge to make the colonists stronger. The most shocking discovery was that the colonists had not just survived their encounters with cosmic threats, they had become cosmic threats themselves. The ships were capable of reshaping star systems, and the enhanced humans aboard them had abilities that bordered on the supernatural. Dr. Sang-hoon realized that the Terra Nova colonists had become something that their original creators never intended. They were no longer just explorers or settlers. They had evolved into galactic guardians with the power to protect or destroy entire civilizations. The data showed that the returning fleet was just a small part of what the colonists had become. There were other fleets scattered throughout the void between galaxies, each one guarding against threats that normal humans could not even imagine. The colonists had spread across the cosmos and had taken on the responsibility of protecting all life from ancient evils. Captain Wu Jin was studying the communication logs when he found something that made his blood run cold. The colonists had not returned home because they missed their old lives. They had returned because something was following them, something that threatened not just the Alliance, but all life in the galaxy there. Quantum matrices had detected massive movements in the void between galaxies. Ancient machines that consumed entire star systems were heading toward Alliance space. The colonists had spent decades learning to fight these entities, and now they were returning to protect their original home DR. Yunji found the final piece of the puzzle in the biological scans. The enhanced colonists were not just individuals, they were connected to each other through quantum entanglement. They shared knowledge and experiences across vast distances and could coordinate their actions perfectly. The Terra Nova colonists had become something that transcended normal human limitations. They were still recognizably human, but they had evolved into beings capable of operating on a galactic scale. They had become the guardians of an entire region of space, and their return meant that the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced was approaching. As Dr. Sang-hoon compiled his final report, he realized that humanity was about to face its greatest challenge. The colonists had returned not as conquerors but as protectors. But the enemy they were protecting against was so powerful that it had forced them to evolve beyond their original human nature. The laboratory was quiet as the three scientists contemplated what they had learned. The missing colonists were no longer missing, and they had returned with power beyond imagination, but their return was not a cause for celebration. It was a warning that something even more powerful was coming. The emergency meeting at Alliance headquarters was the largest gathering of leaders in over 50 years. Representatives from dozens of different worlds filled the massive council chamber, and their faces showed fear and confusion as they tried to understand what was happening. Supreme Commander So Young stood at the center of the room, surrounded by holographic displays that showed classified files that had been locked away for decades. So Young activated the main hologram, and everyone could see the departure records from 47 years ago. The images showed 15 massive colony ships leaving Earth orbit, each one carrying 50,000 people, who were ready to start new lives on worlds beyond their galaxy. She pointed to the records and said the Terra Nova mission was the biggest colonization project humanity had ever attempted. These ships carried our best people and our most advanced technology. The alien delegates in the chamber shifted uncomfortably as they watched the old recordings. The Zephyrian ambassador was a tall creature made of living crystal, and his body reflected the holographic light as he spoke. You humans sent colonists into the void with experimental technology. Do you understand how dangerous that was? Intelligence Director Bio-Ram stepped forward, and her expression was serious as she began to explain what the public had never been told. The colony ships were not just carrying people and supplies, she said. They were also carrying quantum construction matrices that could build new ships and cities from raw materials. The ships had artificial intelligence systems that could learn and adapt to any situation they encountered. The room became very quiet as the delegates realized what this meant. The quantum matrices were designed to take asteroids and space debris and turn them into new ships and habitats. The artificial intelligence systems were programmed to solve problems that the original designers could not predict. But what nobody expected was that the systems would evolve beyond their original program. Rear Admiral Junsuk was one of the few officers who had worked on the original Terra Nova project, and he looked much older than his years as he stood up to address the council. The ships were completely self-sufficient. He explained they could harvest materials from space, build new vessels, and even repair themselves if they were damaged. We designed them to be able to survive anything they might encounter in the void between galaxies. The Morphian delegate was a creature with multiple tentacles instead of arms, and her tentacles were moving rapidly as she spoke. This showed that she was very upset. You sent humans into the unknown with technology that could reproduce itself, she said. What were you thinking? The possibilities for disaster were endless. Admiral Junsuk nodded slowly and said, we thought we were giving them the tools they needed to build new civilizations. We wanted them to be able to create cities and farms and everything else they would need to survive on distant worlds. But we never imagined they would simply disappear. The disappearance had been gradual at first. Regular communications continued for 10 years as the colonists traveled toward their destination. The messages described their journey through empty space and their excitement about the new worlds they would discover, but then the messages became less frequent and more strange. Dr. Sang-hoon was the chief scientist who had analyzed the last transmissions from the Terra Nova fleet. He activated another hologram that showed the final messages. The colonists reported finding ancient ruins on dead worlds he said they discovered. Technology that was far more advanced than anything we had ever seen. The quantum matrices began to absorb and study this alien technology. The last message from the Terra Nova fleet was from Admiral Dongwu himself. He had reported finding a massive structure floating in the void between galaxies. The structure was clearly artificial, but it was older than human civilization. The Admiral said that the quantum matrices were analyzing the alien technology and learning from it. Then the transmissions stopped completely. For 37 years there had been no contact with the Terra Nova colonists' long-range sensors found nothing, no ship signatures, no energy readings, no signs of life. The colonists had simply vanished as if they had never existed. The council chamber was filled with worried voices as the delegates discussed what this meant. The Zephyrian ambassador asked the question that everyone was thinking. If the colonists found alien technology and their quantum matrices learned from it, what did they become? Intelligence Director B.O. Ram brought up classified reports from deep space monitoring stations. Over the years there had been strange energy signatures detected in the void between galaxies. The signatures did not match any known technology, and they seemed to be moving in patterns that suggested intelligence. The reports described massive construction projects happening in areas where no stars existed. Entire solar systems worth of material were being moved and shaped into structures that defied understanding. The monitoring stations had assumed they were observing natural phenomena, but now the truth was becoming clear. Supreme Commander So Young looked at the assembled delegates and said the Terra Nova colonists did not just disappear, they evolved. The quantum matrices learned from the alien technology they found and used that knowledge to transform not just their ships, but the colonists themselves. The implications were staggering. The colonists had been gone for 47 years, and during that time they had encountered alien technology that was far beyond human understanding. The quantum matrices had absorbed this knowledge and used it to transform everything, including the people themselves. Dr. Sang-hoon presented more evidence from the monitoring stations. The energy signatures showed that whatever the colonists had become, they were building on a scale that was almost impossible to comprehend. They were moving planets and reshaping entire star systems. They had become something that operated on a galactic level. The alien delegates were clearly frightened by what they were hearing. The Morphean delegate said, "You humans have created something that could threaten the entire galaxy. What if they have become hostile? What if they no longer consider themselves human?" Admiral Junsuk stood up again, and his voice was steady as he said, "We will know soon enough. The fleet that Captain Haijin discovered is just the beginning. Our sensors are detecting similar formations appearing throughout Alliance space. Whatever the colonists became, they are returning home." The meeting ended with more questions than answers, but one thing was clear. The Terra Nova colonists had encountered something in the void that had changed them completely. They had evolved beyond their original human limitations, and now they were returning with power and technology that no one could understand. As the delegates left the chamber, they all knew that everything was about to change. The missing colonists were no longer missing, and their return would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. The only question was whether they still considered the Alliance their home, or if they had become something else entirely. Captain Haijin was drinking her morning coffee when the alarm bells started ringing all over the ship. The sound was so loud that she dropped her cup and it broke into pieces on the metal floor of her private cabin. She jumped up from her chair and ran toward the bridge as fast as she could. The hallways were full of crew members running in different directions, and everyone looked scared and confused. When she reached the bridge, her eyes went wide with shock. The main screen was showing numbers that made no sense at all. The sensors were picking up something huge moving through space, but the readings were impossible to believe. Navigation Officer Taeho was sitting at his station with his hands shaking as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Taeho looked up at Captain Haijin with fear in his eyes and said, "Captain, these numbers cannot be real. I have checked the sensors 3 times already, but they keep showing the same thing. There are objects out there that are bigger than planets, and they are moving in perfect formation like they are part of some kind of fleet, Captain. Hyjin walked over to the sensor station and looked at the readings herself. The largest object was showing a diameter of over 200,000 kilometers, which was bigger than most planets in their solar system. She had been flying through space for 15 years and had never seen anything like this before. Her heart was beating fast as she realized this discovery could change everything. They knew about the universe. The communication system suddenly came to life and Admiral Kyung-min appeared on the main screen. His old weathered face looked more serious than usual, and behind him Captain Hyjin could see the emergency council chamber at Alliance Command filled with people running around in panic. The Admiral looked directly at her and said, "Captain, we need you to get closer to those objects and send us visual confirmation immediately. These sensor readings are causing panic across all Alliance worlds, and we need to know what we are dealing with, Captain." Hyjin ordered her crew to set course for the mysterious objects, even though they were still very far away. She could tell they were moving slowly through the empty space between star systems. The ship Starwind was one of the fastest vessels in the Alliance fleet, but it still took them 4 hours to get close enough to see what was really out there. As they got closer, the crew gathered on the bridge to watch the main screen. Everyone was completely silent as the objects became clearer. They were not asteroids or natural formations. They were ships, but they were unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. Each vessel was enormous and looked like a floating city with lights twinkling across its surface. Like Star's communications officer Minho was the first person to speak, and his voice was shaking as he said, "Captain, I am picking up artificial gravity signatures from these ships. They have their own weather systems, and I can see what looks like forests and lakes through the transparent sections of their hulls. These are not just ships, they are entire worlds floating through space." The largest ship was so big that it had its own horizon, curved just like a planet. Captain Hyjin could see massive industrial complexes built into its surface with smokestacks reaching up into artificial atmospheres. There were docking bays that could fit entire fleets of normal-sized ships and transport tubes that stretched for hundreds of kilometers, connecting different sections of the massive vessel. Science officer Bo Rem was studying the readings at her station when she suddenly gasped and said, "Captain, these ships are not just big, they are alive in some way. The hull materials are responding to changes in the environment and growing new structures as we watch." I have never seen technology like this before. It is like they are part machine and part living creature. As the Starwind moved closer to the massive fleet, Captain Hyjin noticed that the ships were arranged in a perfect formation that stretched across thousands of kilometers of space. There were at least 50 of the giant vessels, and each one was unique in its design. Some looked like massive cylinders rotating slowly to create artificial gravity, while others were shaped like huge spheres covered in cities and farmland. Sensor readings showed that the ships were not just floating through space, they were actively scanning everything around them with sensor beams that were far more advanced than anything the Alliance had ever developed. The ships seemed to be aware of the Starwind approach and were adjusting their formation to give the small vessel room to maneuver. Then something happened that made everyone on the bridge freeze in shock. The communication system activated, and they heard a voice speaking in old Earth standard language. The voice was clear and strong, but there was something different about it, something that made it sound more than human. "Communications officer." Minho looked at Captain Hyjin with wide eyes and whispered, "Captain, the voice signature matches the records from the Terra Nova colonial fleet, the ships that disappeared 47 years ago when they left to colonize worlds beyond our galaxy. But that is impossible. Those ships were lost with all hands, and we never heard from them." Again, Captain Hyjin told Minho to put the transmission on the main speakers so everyone could hear it. The voice filled the bridge and seemed to come from everywhere. At once it said, "This is Admiral Dongwu of the Terra Nova colonial fleet. We have returned home after a long journey, and we bring gifts for our enemies." The message was simple, but Captain Hyjin could feel the power behind those words. She realized that the crew members who had left 47 years ago on a simple colonization mission had returned as something far more powerful than anyone could have imagined. The ships that surrounded them represented technology that was beyond anything the Alliance had ever seen. Admiral Kyungmin appeared on the communication screen again, and his face was pale as he said, "Captain, we have just received reports that similar fleets have appeared near 12 other star systems all across Alliance space. Whatever happened to the Terra Nova colonists? They have returned in force, and they are not alone." Captain Haijin looked out at the massive ships surrounding her small vessel and realized that this was just the beginning. The people who had left as explorers and colonists had returned as something else entirely, and their message about bringing gifts for their enemies suggested that they had learned about threats that the Alliance did not even know existed. As the Starwind held position near the massive fleet, Captain Haijin knew that everything was about to change. The discovery of the returned Terra Nova fleet would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy and force humanity to confront the reality that their missing colonists had evolved into something far beyond their original human limitations. The bridge crew watched in amazement as the giant ships continued their slow movement through space, carrying with them secrets and technologies that would either save the galaxy or destroy it, depending on what the colonists had learned during their long journey into the unknown regions beyond their home galaxy.